Pine can be difficult to stain, but I'll show you how you can get a finish like this using my methods. Thanks for tuning in. The products that you'll need to stain pine is a pre-stain and your actual stain color. And then you'll need some type of top coat. In my case, I'm using wipe-on polyurethane. After you've sanded your project to your liking, then you'll need a tack cloth. This tack cloth is used to remove all dust particles and microfibers that you may not even see or feel. You need to wipe down the project completely. And after that, we'll apply the pre-stain. Brand isn't significant, but I'm using this brand here. I use a brush to apply this because I know that pine is very absorbent. And I want to get a nice even coat and apply the amount necessary for good coverage. If you've never used a pre-stain before, pre-stain helps to prevent blotchiness when staining on pine. Pine's grain is uneven and dense, with large areas of early wood and late wood. The grain reverses due to typical wood stains, which only color the porous early woods. Pine's surface has absorbent pockets that soak up the stain easily, making the stain job look blotchy. That's why we use a pre-stain to make it even out. I'm trying to get full coverage here. You can see I'm doing the ends, and you can see the color change as the pre-stain is applied. After I completely cover this TV stand, I will wipe it down to remove the excess, like you see here. After the pre-stain has been wiped down, you have within 2 hours to apply your stained color. I'm going with a mahogany, and I want this to be a dark project. As you can see here, I'm applying the mahogany stain with a brush. Sometimes I use a rag when I'm applying stain. With this application, I want to get a really good coverage, and it seems to be a little bit faster for me. It's just a matter of preference, which method you use. I don't think there's any wrong way, as long as your outcome is what you anticipated. The manufacturer recommends that you let it sit for 15 minutes after applying stain, but I let it sit for longer because I wanted it to be quite a bit darker. As you can see, I am removing some excess, but not a whole lot. And you can see that the wood grain is quite dark. Once you have let it dry, I let it dry for overnight, you can apply the wipe-on poly. I'm using a rag to apply this wipe-on polyurethane. It's actually an old t-shirt of some type. Real soft material. Something that doesn't have a lot of lint particles. You can start to see the grain pop once I apply it using a few lengthy strokes. I use a combination of lengthy strokes after I've used more circular strokes in most cases. But here I'm using more lengthy strokes going with the grain. I'll use that combination of circular strokes and lengthy strokes as I apply additional coats to make sure that the saturation point is good. You can start to see the beauty of the wood come through, especially here on the side. The grain really starts to pop once the polyurethane is applied. I see that one board must have absorbed more stain than the other because it's quite a bit darker than the other boards. That sometimes happens with pine. That sometimes happens with stain, even with pre-stain. Sorry for the poor camera angle. I know my head is right in the way. I try to move back eventually. It's starting to look pretty good. You can see the contrast of the light and dark areas of the grain and figure in this project. It's not there yet. After a few more coats, I may do several more coats and do a polishing, and then I will call it done. I wasn't satisfied with the face frame, so I removed what I had done and did some additional sanding and reapplied the mahogany stain. It appears to be coming out a little bit lighter, but you'll notice later on in the video that it's perfectly fine. The shelves lighten up to match. This, I think, looks much better. There was just too many imperfections in the transition of the joints. As you can see, it's much better now. Once you're done with your staining rags, lay them out flat so they can dry, because they will combust, I've been told. I've never had it happen. I waited till after 2 coats of polyurethane, and then I followed that up with some 320 grit for light sanding. Very light touch on the sanding, just to knock down the nibs and some of the imperfections in the polyurethane. You can see it leaves like a ghost haze on the project. Those are basically polyurethane flakes or polyurethane dust. Now I'm applying another coat. After sanding with 320 grit sandpaper and then using the tack cloth to follow up to remove all the dust. You can see here I'm using the circular motion to apply the polyurethane, and then I'll follow that up with more long grain following strokes. And I'll do this for several more applications. Probably about 5 to 6 coats is what I figure I'll end up with. Maybe more. It depends on what it looks like after I do those. You can see that it's really starting to look good now. The inner shelves and inner sidewalls won't get as many coats as the top surfaces. The shelves and the top are my main concern, because both the shelves and the top will be more heavily used and suffer more wear from usage. The wipe-on poly I find is much easier to use than the polyacrylic, the water-based brand. There are no bubbles to deal with is one thing that I noticed. And they actually recommend you to shake before using and then shake periodically during your application process. Remember to keep the coats light. 3 thin coats of wipe-on finish will look smoother than 1 or 2 heavier coats. I don't sand after the first coat of polyurethane that I apply. I sand after the second coat. This way I don't run the risk of going through the stain down to the natural wood again. This is almost complete. I'll probably apply 2 to 3 more coats and I'll call it done. But right now it looks fantastic. I can make it look just a little bit better, I think. Not much. I thank you for watching the video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. Please hit the like button as well and share the video if you have others that are interested in this. Hit the bell notification if you'd like to be notified when videos come out. Thanks again.